everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And today I'm joined by comic book artist and writer Emily Brooks Millar. Hello, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
It's a real pleasure. We're going to talk about your new illustrated book, Birddad, which I've had a look at some of the illustrations. It's fantastic. But before we talk about Birddad, I think, as we said before we started recording, that you're the first comic book artist we've had on the podcast. And so tell us how you came to work in comics and in animation.
Yeah, so I do a little bit of everything. Kind of halving my year between painting and illustration. So the illustrative side includes Birddad, the new book, and I've kind of always been surrounded by comics. My family are involved in comics, storytelling in lots of different ways. My partner's a writer as well. So it's just kind of naturally happened over the years. And I started with tiny stories and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's led to this one.
And are you trained? Have you been to art school or something similar?
So I've actually been rejected from art school a few times.
The fools.
A few times
Uh,
where I have a history degree and I really enjoyed that.
mhm.
And I've just always been doing art in the background all the time. And it was a terrible period of time in so many other ways, but over COVID, it just thankfully took off for me because I had the time to do my degree and do art from home. And it just kind of stepped in this direction.
And was it something you always did though from a young age?
Yes, definitely. So it was very much encouraged in my house. Because my mum and dad both wanted to go to art school, and through various different reasons, they never got to go. So we were maybe a little unusual in that any creative outlet was encouraged. And in hindsight, as an adult, I'm very grateful for that.
I think it does make such a difference. So I often interview musicians, and the ones whose parents are either musicians themselves or have that interest have been so supportive. And of course, it's not always the case.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I kind of grew up in just a community where people were supportive of creative things, but people didn't really have creative jobs. Like my family were a little bit unusual in that sense. And I feel quite lucky that if I'd came home and was like, I want to be a circus performer, they would have been all in.
Well, maybe they're happier that you're not being a circus performer, depending what you wanted to do. But so, were you? Was your interest piqued by reading comics or animated series, or was it always you wanting to do your own, or was it a bit of both?
It was a little bit of everything. So I'm 26, so I was born in 98 and I was very much in the kind of Nickelodeon cartoon generation. So I grew up with SpongeBob, The Simpsons, everything like that. And for us that was certainly like a social thing as well. We would all get together to watch things like that.
Right.
And I've always just kind of expressed my own thoughts and feelings through drawings, through stories. And yeah, I mean, my dad's a comic book writer as well, so it kind of went hand in hand.
And let's talk about Bird then. So this is your latest book. Yeah, tell us all about it.
Yes, so Birddad is a 72-page graphic novel that follows a pigeon through his trials and tribulations of fatherhood. So we see him get involved in fame, we see him try to have family connections, and there's a lot of failure along the way, but it's kind of tongue in cheek, a little bit satirical, and hopefully a good laugh.
And it seems there's a kind of strangeness going on in a lot of your work from what I've looked at. Is that fair to say? I'll give a for instance, people should probably know. It says on your website, recommended 12 plus for cartoon blood and drug use. And then I'm thinking, this is a pigeon, isn't it? But yeah, so explain your kind of on your work. How do you view your work?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just naturally go with what makes me laugh and what I enjoy, and sometimes that is depictions of cartoon violence or drug use. But everything is quite tongue in cheek, and I think if you're gonna go into a creative industry, why not go big or go home, go bold. So you might as well put everything out there and then rein it back in if need be. And I just like getting people talking. I think whether it's the paintings or the books, it's really nice to create something that people feel like they have an opinion on and they
Yeah.
can join in with. So if you go kind of down the creepy route or the funny route, whether it's negative or positive, people feel like they can actually join in with that.
I never crossed my mind before, but is there a rating system for comics? I guess there must be.
It depends. So if you're going through an official publisher, there is. And then if you're doing it on your own, you just take a lot of caution and a lot of research. So there are maybe some teenagers that could read Birddad, but my recommendation would be 12 plus.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's think about Birddad, the character. How did you come up with that him?
So I live in a second story flat and I'm surrounded by pigeons constantly. So, I mean, they were out there, they were outside the window here, but I kind of have like a character Bible that I have at all times of
Interesting.
characters that I like the look of or names. And Birddad had maybe been sitting in there for like a year or 2 years. And I have these characters that I'll maybe like the concept initially and can hang on to and think, oh, where could they end up in future? Whether that's in a painting series, an animation, their own book. And I had the opportunity to have some single page stories featured in the back of Dark Horse Comics.
Hmm.
And Birddad seemed like quite a good fit for that. So it started off as the single page threads. And then after that, it kind of grew arms and legs into this book. So I think he started as something that was one page at a time, and then everything came together.
And how do you what? I mean, these are going to be so simple questions to you, but I just how is it like a storyboarded? Is it, one screen at a time, so to speak?
So it's only as of late, maybe the last couple of years, that I keep a proper sketchbook. I used to just have everything in my head and I would get to a page or a canvas and think, oh, I'll just get it all out at once. And then if you do it that way, you kind of lose some of the ideas you might have when you're out and about or not in your home or your studio. So yeah, he'd been in this sketchbook just as a little blue bird that was maybe like a Homer Simpson type or a BoJack Horseman type. And from there, I kind of thought, oh, what could his name be? Birddad's quite a catchy name that's there. And it was almost working backwards from, okay, we've got this guy, then what happens to him? What's his path? So that was the sketchbook drawings, which then became bigger prints. And from the prints, I thought, oh, okay, I can make this digital and move on to the iPad work.
So with the references that you're giving me, it's starting to make sense. A lot of what I've kind of seen of your work. And of course, Nickelodeon has had that thing itself, didn't it? Of there was something for everyone, really. You could read them on different levels. And is that the same with your work, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm so big on whether it's in book format or exhibition format, having work that people feel like they can approach. And I think Birddad, if you've got a kind of friendly looking character that maybe beneath the surface has a bit more depth to them, it's just making it accessible for people. And there's nothing worse than having a book that's by an artist or a white wall gallery with an artist that people feel just too intimidated by.
Yeah.
And it's nice to create something that can actually be an experience for people.
So, I mean, you mentioned gallery. Do you have your work exhibited as well?
Yeah, so I kind of divide my year up where I'll bounce from one project that's more book based into painting collections. So kind of maybe 6 months of my year I'm painting and I do that all independently and then I sometimes work with representatives for that as opposed to the books all being kind of self-published on their
Yeah.
own. But yeah, the painting collections are exhibited, and I most recently had a solo exhibition that was in Bath, and that was slightly more creepy and unusual work.
So, but are the actual cartoons themselves, they are kind of always in book form, is that right?
Usually, but then everything bleeds into each
Yeah.
other. So I've kind of got this imagined universe of a broken apple, as I've termed it. And everything kind of falls under there. So maybe in one book you'll get little Easter eggs to another book if you've read it. If you go and see an exhibition, you'll maybe spot something in the corner of a painting that is from another type of media. So everything can exist on its own, but as time goes on and the world kind of builds up and builds up, it is like this invisible thread that connects them all.
I think we should let people know where they can find out about all of this and also get involved with Birddad as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I've got right now Birddad is a Kickstarter campaign. So the book has been drawn, it's been completed, but it's not been sent off to print. And it's on Kickstarter. It's named Birddad, and all of the details can also be found on my own website, which is emilybrooksmillar.com.
And with the Kickstarter, there are rewards for people if they take part. Is that right?
Yes, so you can get the book itself, or you can get the book alongside some other goodies that are exclusive to the campaign. So there's keychains, there's limited edition prints, there's surprise items, and then if we meet our goal, there will be extra surprise items on top of that for everyone.
And you've done this before with previous books, is that right?
Yes, so last year I had kind of like a double campaign, which was two books at once, As Told by Rats and Be More Gus, which were kind of polar opposites of each other. One was really dark, and then Be More Gus was very, very all ages appropriate. And it was my kind of book and Kickstarter debut. So we had those launch all at the same time, and it was great. It was lovely. And Kickstarter is such a nice platform for it's maybe not the same as typical social media,
Yeah.
and you just have people that are genuinely interested in independent creation and independent publishing. So after that experience, I was like, let's do this again.
So, what made you take the decision that instead of just doing this for yourself, that you were going to do this and get it published and get these made into books?
So in terms of the books, I think it's quite nice to have something tangible there
Mm.
for yourself first. But then if you want to kind of share these experiences with other people, and I mean I'm an artist full time now, so it's been really good so far, but it's also thinking, oh, where's the next opportunity? Where can I create something? And I think with the books, that's a really good way of kind of cataloging your progress and having that there for people who maybe would be interested in coming to an exhibition,
Yeah.
but kind of finding a book online and having that posted to them first, is a really good way of introducing that full community to each other.
And I think even more perhaps than just purely written books, graphic novels and comics, they really need to be tangible. You know, you can't on a screen just is not the same. You get to see the work for yourselves in your hand, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even when I've been doing the campaigns, I've had questions before of, oh, will there be a digital version? And I totally agree with you that it is about the tangible piece. And I really believe in like printing and sourcing everything ethically
Right.
and have everything printed in the UK, and it's by a lovely team of people down south. And I think just you don't want to lose that. If it's online, it can disappear quite quickly.
Yeah, I think that's right. And yeah, I just can't imagine, my favorite graphic novels having them on a screen. It just would not be the same at all. Do you think you've got a typical reader? You were saying your work moves from the dark to perhaps, the lighter side of things. Is there a typical Emily Brooks Millar reader, do you think?
Well, that's the thing of when you kind of describe it in those terms, you go, oh, it must be maybe younger people that are into more alternative things or things that are a bit more unusual, but people surprise you. I think if you've got like darker topics or stranger characters, you maybe think older people might not be interested in this. And it's very much about the individual. So I found that through Kickstarter and being online, it maybe is younger people that are there that are already in, they're interested in independent comics and zines. But then with the traditional art sides, it kind of brings everyone together in a way that is a little bit more unusual.
And how was it getting published? I think a lot of people listening will be interested in that because it's not an easy thing to do. You're self-publishing, but you've got the team, as you said, sourcing a team to do it is can be quite difficult.
Yeah, I do a lot of cold emailing. That is my day, is reaching out to a lot of people. And I think you need to have quite a thick skin, whether it's painting or publishing, that you will get a lot of no's or a lot of no replies. And yeah, it's just finding the people that work for you. I think it sounds cheesy, but if it's not for you, you might not get that chance right away, and then you find the right people. And it's finding the people that respect the work as well. It's not just completely about profit and turnaround and making things as cheaply as possible. So yeah, it's just kind of putting feelers out there and being prepared for a lot of no's, but not taking them personally.
But I guess the way you're doing it as well, you have ultimate control over these things, which you might not have with a bigger publisher or another publisher.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially if you're not working with traditional characters or you're maybe not in a category of purely, oh, I'm making books for children or I'm making books for adults or using characters that are already recognized. Um, that can be hard to find a publisher that wants to take that on. So sometimes self-publishing and things like Kickstarter kind of create a platform there to show these people that you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, and as well, the first time I saw your work, I probably thought, oh, this is going to be for kids, and then I started to read it and go through it and say, well, not necessarily the youngest of the kids. So I guess maybe from a publisher's point of view, they're always looking for an easy fit. Often, it's to say, yeah, that does that, and it ticks that box or whatever. Whereas you can follow your own the way of doing it, and do what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well when it comes to creativity being your job, you really don't want to, there's always going to be compromises, but you really don't want to fall short on why you're doing it in the first place or the topics that you're talking about. And when it's your full-time job, it would be easy to go, oh, okay, I'll purposely create something that fits into this mold.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that's something from day one that even if it takes a little longer to get to where I'm wanting to be, I'd rather stick with what I feel is right in my gut and what the intention is
And are there particular challenges in comic books, as aside from just books in general, do you think?
within the industry
Within the
itself.
industry, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always been quite male dominated, which a lot of things are within art, but I think if you're going down the kind of traditional comic route, it can be.
Mm.
And I also think a lot of it is where the funding is, where the communities are, and so much of comic making and storytelling and even zine making is based in community. And I think if your area doesn't really have those hubs for people coming together or people feeling like they can share their thoughts online, if there's not a kind of third space between work and home for this extra element, that becomes quite hard. So I think that's how everything's kind of taken off massively in terms of the US for comics.
Yeah.
And the UK has been a little bit more behind, but it's getting there. And I think independently, people are pushing further and further for their own ideas as well.
And there is quite a strong zine community in Glasgow in particular, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And the Glasgow Zine Library is great. I don't know if you've been in there, it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep.
Um, and I think there's just more and more people that, whether it's like a linear story that's quite traditional, or it's a political story that they're telling, if it's news, if it's interviews, it all kind of comes under this one category now. And people have the freedom to put their own spin on it, their own style in it, and it's just not as boxed in as it once was.
So if there's anyone listening who thinks they would like to kind of get involved and have no idea where to start, would the zine libraries and things like that, communities, be a good place to kind of dip your toe?
I think so. And I think it's just good to talk to people. It's nice to see who's out there and what they're doing and why they're doing it. Because I think the kind of life of an artist or the life of a writer can be quite lonely quite quickly.
Mm.
If you've got your own ideas and you think, oh yeah, this is great and I'm gonna power ahead, it's a slippery slope to not taking any kind of feedback or not hearing other people out about their own ideas. I don't think you can go wrong with hearing as many voices as possible.
And you said at the start that you've got other artists and creative people around you. Do you bounce things off them all the time?
Oh, constantly. I mean, even the room I'm in right now, me and my fiance both work in here. So we have a shutter that we pull between us, and that's usually when it hits like 11 a.m. and he says, "You're talking too much today." So yeah, I mean we're always kind of working in the same space. And then my best friend's an illustrator. She's in a big kind of shared studio space that we use together a lot of the time. And then my own family are quite creative too. So we're all quite good at throwing ideas out there and just being brutally honest with each other.
And going back to the idea of advice, do you have other advice for people who, perhaps even their kids, are sure, you said you were into it from a young age. I can remember a good friend of mine from primary school who was obsessed with the Mr. Men books in particular, and he's now making a living as an animator, and doing his own thing. And he kept that vision. We all knew that was going to happen to him right through. But if there was folk who maybe there's an interest in art in their family, but they don't know what's next. Do you have advice for them?
That's a good question. I feel like trying everything if you can, whether it be big or small, if it's encouraging something at home, if there's a club locally, if there's something that's council run or through the school,
Mhm.
giving everything a go. Growing up, I was lucky in that I got to try out a lot of different things that were happening, and that would maybe be at the community hall or at a summer club or teachers that were really good at finding things that I might be interested in. And just because you're a kid that might enjoy drawing or an adult that might enjoy drawing, it might not be what you end up doing in the end creatively.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of has these like first few things they try out, and then maybe they find their feet in sculpture and acting and something that's parallel but not what they started with.
Yeah, I think it's such a underappreciated aspect of life in general is creativity and the arts as well. And talking of which, do you have favorite artists or comic book writers? Ones which have inspired you?
I'm a huge fan of David Shrigley, just
Yeah.
overall. And I kind of think of David Shrigley being like an honorary Scotsman at this point. And I really appreciate the fact that he is a visual artist that a lot of people know through comic books. I mean, you can argue they're graphic novels or comic books, they're art books, but he is also a painter and he animates and he creates other crazy things. So that's someone that's definitely been a backbone. And then I even grew up kind of in the traditional comic scene, around artists like Frank Whiteley and like Johnny Rumisa Jr. and everything as well, where I think if you're gonna draw and paint in an abstract way, it's really important to learn kind of the traditional fundamental skills as well. So even though my style maybe wouldn't line up with people like that, it's so important to know how to do things technically.
So these are people who went on to be artists for DC and for Marvel and the big houses. And when you mentioned earlier on, about women in the world of comics, I always took it to be a bit of a lads' club because that was nearly everyone who wrote for DC and or drew for DC and Marvel. That was the case. Is that changing now, or is it still a bit like that?
I'd say it's changing, and I think especially with social media and everyone talking about things and their thoughts and feelings, it's much more open-minded, and I think people just have more opportunities now within that field. It's not really a thing of, oh, who lives locally around this printing house and who comes for like pints at the pub on a Friday. So I think it's definitely more hopeful than it's ever been.
So do you feel now, having done it for a while, that you have your style, a style that's recognizably yours?
I think so. I'd say that it's usually cute animals with a twist most of the time. So I think whether that's digital or it's a painting, there's usually a little kind of nugget that carries through there that's tongue in cheek. And as I say, my best friend who's an illustrator, we have styles that are different, but they complement each other. And she summed it up very well once where she was like, my work is almost fairy tale like, and a lot of it's kind of for children or stories that are for children, and yours is kind of the expectation that it's for kids, and then you subvert it.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of describing it. Absolutely right. And let's talk a little bit about your paintings as well, because I only kind of found out about those just in the last couple of days, and they're quite striking too. Different, not as cartoon-like, obviously, but what's your inspiration behind your paintings?
I think for a lot of my work, but particularly the paintings, morality is normally like a really vague theme that ties everything together. And I mean, I came from like a very Catholic upbringing and Catholic schooling, and the kind of sense of right and wrong has always been drummed into me. So the last kind of collection of paintings that I did was named I'm a Perfect 10, which is a bit tongue-in-cheek again, kind of looking at the morality of wellness culture and how we view ourselves. So I usually have a cast of characters that represent all these different facets of morality and how we look at one another. But very quickly, these kind of cartoon styles become quite chaotic.
And the, you say they're cartoon styles, and I've only had a kind of brief look at them, but they're less cartoonish than Birddad and your other things, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's sometimes the difference between creating a one-off piece compared to something that's a linear story or a collection of stories that it's maybe a little bit more instinctual and what I feel at the time and getting messy in this space with what I have. And I think they kind of bounce off of each other. I go from something that's a little bit more unplanned to something that's planned. And it's a good way to kind of keep your inspiration and your sanity up between both sides.
Well, I was going to ask that if because you said that you kind of spend half the year perhaps on your paintings and then the other half on the books. And does that almost keep both fresh for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd find it hard to do purely one or the other, where I love them, but I would say I love them equally. Where you do something and you plow all of the hours into it and you work really hard for deadlines, and then by the end of that book project, you go, oh, I could really go some painting right now, and then vice versa.
I used to work for someone who's known as a writer and an artist as well, and he would write in the morning from 9 to 12, and then 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock was when he would flip over to art. So for exactly those reasons, he could kind of bring something fresh to both each time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I've tried to get into the habit recently of waking up a little bit earlier, maybe starting work very early in the morning
Right.
and kind of working until like 12 or 1 o'clock, taking a couple of hours and then coming back to it for a chunk in the evening as well. Because you do need to kind of get outside and refresh your brain, particularly if you're on these two sides of a coin.
And I think, as you say, it can be quite a solitary thing being an artist, even though you're sharing spaces with people. But when at the end of the day, it's just you and the blank canvas or the blank screen, and you're getting down to it. Yeah, I think that's right. A lot of people maybe forget to go outside and breathe.
Yeah, that's even I'm sure it was Stephen King that was like, oh, I get up at 5 a.m. and I work until 12. And then after that, the day is mine because how can you create things without going out and experiencing them in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. His book on writing actually has got lots of great kind of tips on those kind of things. And do you have any future plans that you can tell us about?
Well, me and my partner, Chris, who we work in the same space, we have some work that we're doing together where my work is maybe coming together with his horror writing. And I'm currently getting everything together for hopefully another solo painting show within the next 6 months, 8 months.
And have you ever had any animated, like as in cartoons or even TV or anything like that? Have you ever had any kind of inklings that that might be in the future?
Maybe I'm entirely self-taught with animation, so I really enjoy it, but I can recognize that it's quite clunky and
Right.
that's a style choice, but it's not a find, you know.
I love that you could just say, "Oh no, it's a style choice." I definitely did that until you get better at it. Yeah.
And then it's perfect and I go, that's a style choice too. So no, I mean, I really enjoy animation, and I think for me, what's important when I'm still learning about it is collaborating with people that bring something else great to the table. So everything I've done with animations involved my friend Lucy, and they're an amazing musician. And without Lou, I think it would be very hard to have done the projects that we've done. So I think animation's a really fun collaborative thing. And whether that's in a gallery space or just on screen, it's a nice way to kind of exercise new skills as well.
So again, where can people find the animations? Are they on the website too, on your website as well?
Yeah, everything's on my website. So,
And there's a
Emily,
newsletter as well. I noticed there was a newsletter too.
yes, that's my only form of social media. I don't have anything else. So everything's on there. There's maybe like one or two a month, no more than that. I don't pester people. And everything's on my site to view. And if it's not there directly, it's linked somewhere else.
Yeah, it's definitely worth people checking out without a doubt. I was wondering, do you have other influences, whether that's films, books, that kind of feed into your work?
Yeah, I think I had so my degree was an oral history degree.
Mhm.
So a lot of very long form conversation with people that maybe doesn't fit the traditional mold of like a back and forth. So there's a lot of kind of oral historians that I really like. And I also like books that maybe kind of explore a concept without having like a linear narrative. So I found a book the other day that was like Candy Andy and the Barandas or something like that. I'm sure it was Candy Andy and the Barandas, where it was the creator of Thunderbirds had all these other projects that he did. And some of them completely took off, and some of them were just like a packaged concept piece that didn't go any further. And this book was looking at one of the ones that just never got picked up. And it's basically these kind of Thunderbird-esque children that are like mannequins and puppets, and they're interacting with this panda family, the Barandas. And I just thought it was so interesting that it's this start of an idea, you can kind of pick away at it and ask questions. But he's not telling you exactly what the story is. And I quite like books that have a little bit of that behind it as well.
That's got to be a name of a band. That's such a great name. Andy and the Mirandas. That's got to be. And we should remind people before we go how they can contact you on your Kickstarter again, and the name of your website too.
Yes, so on Kickstarter, it's Birddad, and my website is emilybrooksmillar.com, where pretty much everything can be found.
Emily, it's been such a treat to talk to you, and I've been so interested getting to know your work over the last few days. I really enjoy it too. I didn't know what to expect, so it's fantastic to be able to tell you that. Yeah, thanks, and all the best with Birddad and everything else.
Thank you, and I really appreciate you having me here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.